My name is Strange, and I believe that people should know the truth. After I began to publish the story that happened to the refugees from Russia, many of our viewers realized that they could try to get in touch with me. That's what our hero did, whose name he asked not to reveal. After he told me his story, I wanted to meet him, but the only thing our hero wanted was to share his story. Talk it out if you want. He recorded everything on a dictaphone and asked her to make it public in case he was gone. I am bringing the record without changes.
I work in the library of our city and something strange is happening here. I think I'll start a little ahead of the main events. I will clarify, so to speak, the exposition. I am a library employee and my job is to sort books, maintain catalogs, and distribute books to visitors. Besides me, there are 3 other people working in the library. A student girl, an old lady director, and her friend of the appropriate age who is responsible for books. Our library was not large. In fact, we occupied the first floor of a 3-story building and the basement, which we used as storage. The basement itself was spacious, dry and cool, so most of the books and all the documents were stored there. Yes, since I'm a guy, I had to carry piles of books and documents. And one day, while lowering another pile of books into the basement, I stumbled at the very end of the stairs and fell. Moreover, he fell as stupidly as possible, managing to turn 180 degrees around his axis in the air, and as a result, landing on the concrete floor of the basement, not with his face, but with his ass and back. The books I was carrying, of course, fell apart, as well as the papers with numbers attached to them. Yes, we keep books numbered so that it is easier to find them, but we do not write numbers on the covers of the books themselves, because this is barbarism. At least that's what the old director says. After that, I had to go to the catalog and look for the numbers of those books that I was carrying to the basement. That's when I noticed the first oddity. Some numbers in the catalog were simply skipped. I mean, they didn't exist at all. Here comes 143, here comes 144, and then 146. Where did 145 go? I have no idea. And this was not the only case, no. In about every 40 rooms, one was missed. 17, 61, 83, and so on. There was no sense, no logic or sequence. The book numbers were simply missing. And out of curiosity, I decided to figure it out. There wasn't much to do anyway, so why not occupy yourself with such an impromptu investigation, I thought. At first, I decided to just ask the old lady who was in charge of the library, and she replied to me that these were just typos, saying that I was old, sometimes missing numbers in documents. Nothing like that. I agreed, but still decided to go back down to our basement and look for books whose numbers were missing. Yes, it could be that if there is no number, then there is no book, but I decided to check anyway. After walking up the stairs again and reaching the huge iron bookcases, I began to search, systematically sorting through the mountain of waste paper that was stored in them. An hour passed, followed by another, and I was already thinking of giving up on this case because I still didn't find anything. However, luck smiled on me. Under the number 326, which was also missing from the catalog, there was a thin notebook with 18 sheets. I was intrigued and immediately opened it, but almost immediately closed it back with undisguised disappointment. The notebook was filled with some kind of scribbles that vaguely resembled a mixture of Chinese and Japanese characters, only distorted to the point of impossibility. And for some reason, my head started to hurt when I tried to make out what was written, relying on my limited knowledge of Chinese. It didn't work out, so I shoved the notebook back into the closet without thinking and headed home. The working day was already coming to an end, and I also had a headache. I thought at the time that it was because I had been sitting in a stuffy basement for several hours. In short, I managed to take time off, and I headed towards my house, dreaming of a pack of headache pills. That's where the strangest thing starts. The next day, I woke up with a headache that hurt even more, and a temperature under 39 degrees. So I warned everyone in the library that I would not be at work today due to illness and fell back on the bed. The whole day passed as if in a delirium, from which I only occasionally fell out to drink antipyretic or just Moors. But the dreams were the worst. The dreams I saw were filled with those scribbles from the notebook I found. But these scribbles behaved not like ordinary drawings, but like roots. It was as if they were growing. They grew first on paper, and now on my own mind. I saw it, and I'm willing to bet my hand I felt it. Although at that time I blamed everything on hallucinations from high fever. We would all think the same, I think. Dreams at temperatures above 38 have never been known for adequacy, right? The next day I felt much better. The temperature dropped and my head didn't hurt anymore, although there was definitely some noise left in it. So I finished my unscheduled day off and headed back to the library, where during the break I decided to look at that notebook again. I don't know why, but something seemed to pull me to look at these scribbles again. I didn't feel such a craving even when I quit smoking, and it was very hard for me. Going down to the basement and opening the iron cabinet in which that notebook was kept, I quickly found it and opened it, except this time it wasn't scribbles. No, they were definitely some kind of symbols. Yes, they are illegible and difficult to read, but still symbols. These were the coordinates. It took me a while to figure it out, but at some point the puzzle in the heads seemed to take shape. These were the coordinates of something that was in the woods outside the city, if I understood everything correctly, of course, and if you believe Google Maps. And this time I didn't get a headache while I was reading the contents of this thin notebook, but the noise in it definitely got louder. You know, I probably should have stopped at that moment, burn a rotten notebook, and try to forget about it like a bad dream. But I was curious, so on my very first weekend, I packed up and went to the forest, towards the coordinates that were written in that notebook. It probably looks very stupid from the outside, and I assure you, it is. It was completely idiotic, but I decided to satisfy my curiosity anyway. Early in the morning, I packed up, got dressed, and went to the bus stop, from where I took a bus to the city border and went to the coordinates. It was far enough to walk, so it took about 2 hours until I finally reached my destination. It was a clearing in the forest, surrounded by a fence made of metal sheets. Why would someone fence something in the forest in this way? I thought. This is absolute nonsense. Almost no one goes to this forest anyway, except for a dozen very fanatical mushroom pickers. However, the fence has not gone away from my thoughts. He continued to stand, blocking the way to the place where I wanted to go. I climbed the nearest tree and carefully climbed over the fence. Beyond it was a clearing overgrown with tall, bright green grass. Unnaturally thick grass, which cannot grow in the forest. And when I looked closely, I realized that this was not a clearing at all, but a crater. The crater is probably from a meteorite. At least that's what I thought when I noticed the melted earth at the edges of the clearing. I went to the center, pushing aside the tall, sometimes too tall, grass with my hands. In the center lay, I do not know how to describe it. It was a meteor, but somehow strange. It was porous and hollow from the inside, as if it served as a capsule or could be a storage for something. I do not know what I expected to see here, but I was frankly disappointed. I was walking back to the fence along the path I had already made through the extremely dense grass when I felt a burning sensation in my hand, as if from nettles. The sleeve of the jacket on my left arm slightly peeled off from my active movements, and apparently I touched the nettles hidden in this grass with my bare skin. Cursing, I stumbled to the fence, rubbing my stung hand, and climbed over it since there was something to cling to from the inside. Disappointed, I headed home. It was only when I finally got to my apartment and took off my outerwear that I noticed something on my left arm that shouldn't have been there at all. Grass. The grass is the same rich color as in that clearing in the forest. The grass that grew from the place where I thought the nettle had stung me. I immediately tried to pull this stuff out of myself, but as soon as I pulled on this bunch of grass, I felt incredible pain. It was like I was trying to pull my hair out. Whatever this thing is, it has already taken root in my left hand. I panicked then. I shaved off this stuff, but literally 10 minutes later, this weed grew out of my skin again. The noise in my head became deafening. Now I could even make out fragments of phrases. I tried to cauterize the place where this grass grew from, but it didn't help. Now I could feel this weed growing under my skin, slowly but surely. I locked myself in the house and started trying all the ways I knew. I cut my own hand, trying to pull out the roots and cauterize the wound after. I squeezed the blood flow with a tourniquet. I tried a lot, but it didn't help. And in the process of all this, I still found an article on the internet about a meteor shower that took place near our city. Apparently, that clearing grew on the site of the fallen meteor, which brought with it, in itself, this weed. And the noise in my head turned into a second stream of thoughts. I'm willing to bet that these are the thoughts of this plant that is now literally using me as a garden bed. This stream, he expressed pleasure and satiety. When I realized this, I almost threw up. They were eating me right now and were very happy with it. To hell with everything. I ordered a jar of pesticides from the store, the most potent ones I could find. They'll be here in half an hour. I'm going to cut my arm open and pour pesticides right on the roots of this stuff, and then I'm going to cauterize every single one of them. If it doesn't help, well, I ordered a few liters of gasoline. I'll pour it into the bathroom, build something like a Bickford cord, set it on fire, lie down in the bathroom and burn myself to unconsciousness with pills. If this stuff has nowhere to grow, then maybe the weed will die. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe I should have called the paramedics or the cops, but I won't do it. This thing is too dangerous. Pesticides and gasoline will be delivered to me soon. Pray for my luck and in no case approach round glades with unnaturally bright, green and dense grass. And Strange, thank you for the opportunity to tell your story posthumously.
What I want to tell you may cause most people to be surprised or skeptical, but I'm stating everything as a living eyewitness, a survivor by chance. I'll start in order. Although my thoughts are confused, it's hard for me to talk about what I've been through, but I have to testify about it. What I am going to tell you is a confirmation of the presence of extraterrestrial entities on our planet. They treated me neutrally. You can say they didn't touch me with a finger, which I can't say about the representatives of Homo sapiens, to whom I fell into the hands after. Although the root cause of everything was my curiosity, I want to tell you everything in order. I am Russian by nationality, but I have almost never lived in Russia. I was born and spent my entire adult life in Azerbaijan, which determined my future life in many ways. After graduating from the Oil and Gas University with a degree in oil drilling, I got a job at an American oil company. Its name does not really matter. All developments were conducted in Iraq. It seemed prestigious to me and promised decent earnings. Of course, I agreed to leave Azerbaijan. We arrived in Iraq in the afternoon. The local flavor immediately caught our eye. Although everything was decent. From Basra, we were transferred by helicopter to the Korna field, 65 kilometers from Basra itself. The town of oil workers is a very comfortable hostel food. I personally liked everything then. If I had known how it would all turn out for me in the future, then I would have at least refused to work in this company. The first 2 weeks were ordinary. We drilled a well and did all the work that was required of us. In particular, I worked as a driller and spent almost all my time on the drilling rig, spending the night in the town, and in the morning going on shift again. One day we were drilling a well, everything was going normally. Suddenly, the geologist who accompanied the whole process announced that a huge cavity had been felt under the drilling tool. You need to be careful, there may be a gas-bearing reservoir. We took all precautions, but during the drilling process, the drilling tool simply fell into the cavity. On our own, we eliminated the accident and cemented the well. Everything had to be reported upstairs. That's where the weirdness started. The drilling site and the drilling town were cordoned off by American troops on Humvees. They refused to explain the situation or explain anything immediately. They did not enter into any contacts. We were simply evacuated from the drilling rig and shoved into the dorm rooms. It was forbidden to leave the town. However, at night, my friend and I were still able to get behind the perimeter. Why we did this is difficult to explain. They just decided to break the established order and get to a small Bedouin town near the throgs of the low cliffs of Kurna in the middle of the sands. The landscape was like the moon. Sand, 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 and small spurs. It is difficult to explain what kind of town it was, a small settlement, as if a camp on the route of some caravans. People appeared and disappeared there. But sometimes they could get hold of something like moonshine of 30 degrees of strength. Well, in fact, we went for this alcohol. We did not go out to the village. At night, we simply got lost and decided to go out to the rocky spurs, using them as a landmark. We found the rocks, looked around, and I personally found a small depression in the rock, such as a gnome or cave. I took out my notebook and lit up a few torn pages. For some reason, we were afraid to use the light of mobile phones. It hurts to attract attention with an unnatural light, but the fire was kind of natural, and I thought it wouldn't attract attention. Understand me, the situation was ambiguous. I can't answer the question of why we even went into this hole then. But they climbed. Only the entrance was narrow. It was possible to walk further standing up. But after walking 20 steps, my friend and I fell into an underground hole, flew about 6 meters. The comrade screamed. By hitting his foot, I felt a light breeze, and I said that we need to go in the direction forward. Where the wind is blowing from, there is an exit. That's what we did. After walking on 4 legs for 5 or 6 meters, we crawled into a large grotto. There we found strange cocoons, the size of basketball. My friend opened the cocoon with a knife, which he took with him. Whitish slime sprayed out, and a small, cat-sized, insect-like creature fell out of the cocoon. At first it looked like an ant, but now I can say for sure, it looked like a transparent mantis. I stepped on the creature and crushed it. We took a lot of photos on a mobile phone. After a moment, I felt a ringing in my ears, a vibration, and concrete images began to appear in my head amid the monotonous sound. I didn't look at my friend, I just couldn't. The trance engulfed me. Obeying him, I went in the depths of the grotto. On and on. It was dark, but I could see everything. Now I can't tell if my eyes saw it, or if I used images, which someone forced into my head. Coming out of the grotto, I found myself in front of the vaults, in the middle of which there was something dark. The sound of static electricity was heard. The darkness was palpable. It sounded clearly in his head. Stop. One more step and instant death. With a lateral slice, I snatched out a creature that periodically appeared and retreated. About 2 meters tall, antennae like an insect, shell, mandibles. But the image was melting in my head, like waking up from a nightmare. It seems like here he is, I see, and suddenly he forgets. Now I am recording this audio message with only one purpose. What I saw should become public. This is a matter of the life of this humanity. I remember a persistent image, an asteroid crashing on the surface of the Earth back in the Cenozoic. It was this steroid that brought these creatures to Earth, so they bred. And now insectoids, or non-insects, are the true masters of the Earth. And all of humanity can become their food and incubator for their offspring. It's very hard for me to speak. I don't remember how we got out of the grotto. My friend and I woke up in the middle of the desert, surrounded by soldiers. There were 3 soldiers, and their officer was with them. They spoke in English, but the essence of their conversation barely reached me. My head hurt terribly. The officer ordered our phones to be taken away, which the soldiers did. Then they started beating me and my friend. But what happened next ruined my life. One of the soldiers put my comrade's knife in my hand. When I looked around, I saw my friend's body. It was turned over on its stomach, lying in a pool of blood. Myung Yu was accused of murder, and then transferred to a compulsory psychiatric commission. They completely destroyed me, making me crazy in the eyes of those who knew me and could trust me. Special agents came to me twice at the clinic. I figured that out later. I was offered to testify, promised release and restoration of all rights. But I knew that, as soon as I spoke, they would immediately take me away. I was silent until today. I have to say everything. This audio recording is the only evidence exposing the fact of the presence of extraterrestrial beings on Earth with the ability to telepathy. If you are listening to this audio recording, then know I am no longer alive. One of the people who became the victim of contact with non-human beings swore to multiply it like a virus on the internet if I stopped contacting. I have in my hands the diary of an employee of a secret research base in the USA. The authorities have strictly classified all information, but as I said in other videos, many people even in the highest echelons of power support me and want people to know the truth. Next, I will read out the diary without changes, which officially does not exist. I'm starting. I am an employee at a research base and something strange is happening here. So comrades, I've been working here for some time, and at first everything was fine. But lately I have been noticing more and more strangeness happening around. I do not know what is going on, so I will write here. Here I'll describe everything that happened during this damn week, just to talk it out. Otherwise, I will completely move. I will begin my retelling from the first day, gradually getting to the point. Day 1. It was an ordinary day then, the same as dozens before it. I've been working at this base for 3 months now, so I'm already used to it. What are we doing? We are listening to heaven. As one of the senior staff likes to put it, a huge number of radio telescopes are scouring space in search of extraterrestrial intelligence. This is our main job, although some are conducting third-party research. That was the first time I heard a strange sound in the forest. It's a cross between the squeal of a cat being trodden on its tail and the hum of an airplane turbine. I was pretty scared then and ran to the residential building. Day 2. I helped in the lab today. Well, as I helped, the usual work in the style of bring, give, dump, do not interfere. As if someone would entrust something more responsible to the laboratory assistant. In the afternoon, I sat with our guard, one of many. He said that lately the cameras have been periodically messing up for no reason, and his colleagues who have night shifts say something about strange glitches. They say that the cameras detect something like glare on the water or air trembling from the heat. And I also found out that they came across dead animals in the forest several times. I did not leave the station grounds that day. Day 3. At night, I was woken up by dogs. The cursed dogs were growling at the forest, as my friend explained to me when I went out to ask what was going on here. They were howling so loudly that my ears were almost blocked. What could possibly have excited them so much? A strange sound from the forest and glitches with cameras did not occur to me then. In vain, as I understand it now, very much in vain. The day passed quickly enough, but in the evening the strangeness continued. One dog was missing, and as a result the guards tried to find it for a couple of hours. The sheepdog, and it was a sheepdog, was never found, but they found a bloody trail going deep into the forest and several pieces of dog hair nearby. No one asked any questions, but since then, we have been walking in constant tension. Okay, if it's just a wild animal. But considering what I've already seen and heard, I didn't go into the forest alone anymore. Day 4. Some of the devices are out of order, just check. Guess who was harnessed to fix them? That's right, me. But at least I talked to our listeners. As it turned out, they caught a strange signal. Not the same as from stars or, for example, planets. No. It was meaningful. A message consisting entirely of unreadable characters, in which, nevertheless, a certain logic and order were guessed. What's worse is that those who had time to look at this message better are now suffering from migraines. What is even stranger is that senior researchers walk in perpetual tension. It's like something important is happening, as if they were witnessing something unimaginably great. Some of the guards complained of headaches after night shifts, and the dogs no longer quiet down at night. They bark hoarsely until their voice leaves them completely. I feel uncomfortable here. I try not to be alone, and I no longer go to the radio telescopes. I don't want to repeat the fate of that dog. Day 5. Something fell from the sky. A flaming fireball cut through the sky and fell somewhere in the forest. Damn. There is a commotion at the base. An expedition is going to the crash site. On one hand, I don't want to get into this, but on the other, I have to figure out what's going on here. Why did the car fall after the signal? What was that signal? Why did he fall in the direction the dogs were barking at? What the fuck were they barking at? I chewed off all my nails. I signed up for a research group. We leave tomorrow at dawn. I need to sleep it off. I wish I could say that, but sleep didn't come at all then, and in rare moments of oblivion, I only had nightmares. Symbols that could not be deciphered, creepy creatures that seemed to crawl out of a fallen car. At the same time, when I was suffering from insomnia, my head was filled with thoughts about all those strange events that had happened over the past 5 days. I still remember how, in my half-delirium, I assumed how they could be connected. Is this an invasion? Or a friendly visit? Or maybe it has nothing to do with anything at all. I'm just paranoid. Day 6. The group went out early in the morning to make the necessary measurements and return before dark, so I can get a good night's sleep. 5 of the guards and the same number of scientific staff, including me. We moved into the forest at dawn, moving in the direction where the thing, whatever it was, had fallen. The forest was surprisingly quiet, too quiet, even for such an early hour. Yet a natural silence weighed on us more heavily than the backpacks with equipment that we carried on our backs. Only our professor, the leader of this spontaneous outing, was unnaturally cheerful. We walked for about an hour, making our way through the forest thicket, until we found the first signs of something large falling. Broken and burned treetops. This something was falling at the sharpest angle possible, judging by what we had noticed, so it was still a long way to go. And that didn't make me happy at all at the time. The longer we were in this forest, the harder it was. Considering all that had happened, my sleep-deprived brain saw a terrible monster in almost every shadow. What's worse, the silence is over. Yes, she was pushing, but she was better than what started next. the silence was replaced by sounds that alarmed everyone. The rustle of bushes, some kind of tapping coming from afar, and the howling of the wind. If it was the wind, of course, and not a single bird or any other animal. There weren't even any insects. This situation bothered almost everyone, especially the guards, who casually reached for their service weapons, and only the professor remained unperturbed, continuing to walk forward. And so, in a similar state, we got to a more obvious trace of the fall, a huge pothole in the ground. We're almost there. I don't know how long we walked, but it appeared before us. It was anything but a meteorite. There was something lying where the pothole ended, a sphere with a color that could not exist on Earth, and around it towered pillars of unknown material, covered with those incomprehensible symbols from my dream. But what finished me off was below, at the base of these columns. The land there was no longer land. She has turned into something that looks very much like stale meat, which somehow continues to move. This thing was breathing. I saw how this muck at the base of the platforms inflated and then deflated again in time with the flickering of the sphere in the very center of the structure. Judging by the pothole that led directly to it, it was this sphere that fell from space to our planet yesterday. She managed to grow so much just overnight. I was distracted from my thoughts by a strange sound that did not belong here at all. It was a laugh. It was the professor's laugh that started this little expedition. He was shaking as if in a fever, laughing like a madman and walking towards this structure erected by someone unknown in the middle of the forest. We all froze looking at him. The professor had already passed the first columns and was now staggering towards the sphere. And finally reaching it, he turned around. I don't know what happened to his face, but I was scared. I was so scared that I stopped breathing. Maybe it was the unnaturally wide artificial smile, or the fact that his eyes expressed nothing at all. They were like a dead man's. A shot rang out. One of the guards lost his nerve. The professor collapsed onto that strange surface and seemed to be sinking into it. At the same time, we witnessed how the coverage area began to expand. This stuff gradually grew, devouring organic matter. That's when it all came together in my head. Dead animals, a dead dog, and strange sounds. The sounds that I heard 5 days ago in the forest now sounded again. Something came out from behind the trees. It looked like a man, but just as much as an inept sculpture looks like him. He had no eyes or nose, just a huge toothy mouth that split his head in two. These creatures, how could we not notice them? This is, and then I remember the conversation I had with the guard. Glitches on the cameras. I still remember how with barely obeying hands I took my phone out of my pocket, turned on the camera, pointed at it, and saw nothing. Somehow these monsters were not captured by video cameras. And in the forest, apparently they also hid excellently. Just like that, we overlooked the invasion right next to us. And more of these parodies of people came out from behind the trees. They walked towards us at a broken pace, as if they had never been able to walk. But they did it amazingly fast. And I ran as fast as I could. The others are probably the same. I heard gunshots behind me, but very soon they were replaced by screams. We walked here for several hours, so I hadn't run even a quarter of the way when I finally ran out of steam. I dropped my backpack at the very beginning, so all I had to do was go ahead, back to the base, and pray to all the gods I know that these creatures did not get to me before. And I walked, I ran, sometimes I crept. When I heard those sounds again, I would freeze and start looking around, hoping that at least I would have time to notice something before I was devoured. Or they will drag you to these columns, where they will devour you again. Day 7, and here we are at last. Somehow I managed to get back to the station before dark. Alone. No one else came. I was interviewed for a long time by our head of security on the topic of what happened in the forest. I could barely tell you. I stumbled, stuttered, and kept muttering. I was finally released only an hour later. I'm locked in my living room right now. I'm sitting, shaking from the experience and writing this diary. For half an hour now, there has been no sound outside except shuffling footsteps and hoarse growls. These creatures came, and I suppose killed everyone or most of them. While I was sitting here, I learned that about 10 years ago, another meteorite fell into the same area. Nothing else was said, but I assume that he is the original source of all the oddities that happened before. The same sphere that fell somewhere in the woods and began to prepare a springboard with the hands of its copies of people for intrusions? Don't know. I just hope that those who need to see it will see it. Now I'm going to try to get to the radio center and call someone here. This situation should be known. I hope that this will not be my last message, but there is little chance of that. Goodbye. Dear Strange, my name is Nicholas Kadinsky. My name is fictitious, of course, but my last name is real. I am the child of immigrants from the USSR. My family left for the States in the 60s of the last century. You're probably wondering why I'm writing this to you. I'm sorry, I just didn't know how to start. At first I thought I would write something like, I have such a story that you will light up. Well, not literally, of course. In general, something like that, yes. But actually, I do have a story that you might be interested in. My friend recommended your channel to me. First, I watched some of your videos in English, and then I liked it in Russian. Honestly, you have a talent for finding information. Of course, I've known for a long time that our government is hiding information about aliens, but so much so, it takes you by the soul. I was especially uncomfortable with your last video, where there was a recording from the DVR. To be honest, I don't even want to go outside anymore. After all, who knows, maybe the Squillings are among us. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Of course, I am not writing to you to shout praises. More precisely this too, so that you know for sure that everything is not in vain, that you are doing a truly important job of uncovering the truth. But this is not my main purpose of this letter. Actually, I want to share something personal with you. You know I've been in love for a year now, or maybe even possessed somewhere. I do not presume to judge my emotional state. And this is the story that I want to share with you. Actually, that's what prompted me to write to you. And my love began with a simple trip. Believe it or not, I was driving my old Ford Crown Victoria back then. In the letter you can see the attached photo of my car. She's cool, it's just a pity that she'll have to change soon. Well, I was driving from Plymouth to Lowell. My once dearly beloved wife, Alyssa, is buried there. We met when we were still in high school, and after graduation we got married. We lived with her for 15 long years. Can you believe it? So, I can't either. Everything was fine with us. Exactly until COVID's disease took her away from me in 2019. Since then, I've been alone. I tried to get to know someone, but everything was unsuccessful. Until I met her. Anyway, on the way to Lowell, I stopped at a gas station at the entrance to the city. And as I've been doing for the last few years, I managed to buy 10 beautiful bright scarlet roses from old Jennifer. I remember we had a dialogue then. It seems he was like this.
What are you going to visit your late wife again?
Jennifer asked me. Her wardrobe has rarely changed in recent years. Or maybe she just liked to wear the same thing. I didn't ask her. And your back I see in your favorite pink Panama hat. The sun is not shining so much today. From time to time, I tease this good-natured flower seller again.
It's not because it's only 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and in 2 more hours it will be scorching like in the Sahara Desert. But how do you know about it, my dear Nicholas?
She returned her smile to me.
You didn't think it was time to let her go, did you? You're almost 40 years old, so it's not long to spend old age alone.
I can't meet anyone yet, Jen. They're all too empty. They don't have the fire in their eyes that my beautiful Alyssa had. The key word is was.
Go to a local bar, pick up some local, and then, you see, something will spin between you.
Let's see, January, I'm tired of these stuffy and smoky bars. I don't think I can find love in the whole universe anymore.
That's it. Don't give up on yourself.
And then she hit me on the head with a bath broom, which she also sold. Look at that. He's already dropped his hands, I see, she said, clicking her tongue. Okay, Jennifer. How much do I owe you? 9, isn't it?
A tenner. A penalty for low self-esteem and little self-confidence.
Well, fair. Keep your cherished $10. Thank you for the flowers. I'm sure if my Alyssa were alive, she would have liked them just like that.
I'm sure of it, Nick.
Jennifer replied, smiling sadly at the same time. I have the flowers then, got into my car, and drove on. I drove to Lowell and turned into the local cemetery. My beloved had no relatives. She was an orphan. Therefore, I decided to bury her right there in this city where we rested on our winter vacation 5 years ago. Because of this, every year in the month of April, I fill up a full tank of my car, take my favorite Snickers chocolate bars with me and hit the road. We can say that this turned out to be a kind of such a nice tradition, albeit with a touch of sadness. I spent about an hour and a half at the cemetery then. I just sat leaning against the tombstone of my beautiful wife and told her about all the news for the year, and about myself and about life and about politics. You could say that for all these 5 years, she has been such a silent companion to me, who will just listen. Although, of course, sometimes I really miss her grumbling. After that, I went to the Element Lexington Hotel. I didn't have many things, but I loved sleeping there. And besides, their bar always served delicious pancakes with maple syrup and blackberry ice cream in the evenings. And I, being a noble sweet tooth, could not refuse such a delicacy. I remember I was checking out the bar patrons back then, and my gaze caught on a girl with emerald-colored hair. She was wearing blue jeans, and she was wearing a red plaid shirt on top. She was sitting at the bar and carefully reading the labels on the bottles of alcohol. Well, apparently she has such fun, I thought then. And after a while, this strange-looking girl turned to me, gave the bottle to the bartender, came up to me. "Young man, is something bothering you?" she asked me. "Or are you following me?" "Oh, no, not at all." I held my hands out in front of me as a sign of apology. "I was just interested that you read something on the alcohol bottles. It's rare to see anyone doing this." "That's it. Yes, you're right. I'm actually quite a curious person. I'm interested in everything. I've been in this city recently, and I am studying everything in detail." "What exactly are you studying?" I asked this beautiful stranger with interest. "Yes, that's literally it. People, local animals, architecture. So I got to alcohol. However, I haven't tried it yet." "And don't even think about it," I exclaimed figuratively. "He can ruin your life." "Is it true? Well, I'll follow your advice. Are you waiting for someone or the place is vacant, my lady. Have a seat. I'll be glad to have your company." She sat down, and she looked into my eyes very carefully, and I'm in hers. Her eyes were very unusual. It is their color. The left one was brown, the right one was red. It's a fascinating sight, I want to tell you, and the look itself. At that time, I had the feeling that she had looked into my very soul. "You have heterochromia, don't you?" I asked her to remove this awkward silence between us. "What is it? What is it?" she asked in surprise. "Well, it's when the eyes are different colors." "Ah, that's what confuses you. It's innate. We scouts always have those eyes. They allow us to observe this world in a much wider range." "Oh, so you also serve in the army? How cool." I exclaimed in surprise then. "Well, you could say that." She smiled at me disarmingly. And it seems that it was then that I finally disappeared. "What's your name, dear lady?" I decided to get to know her even better. "Orion." "That looks like the name of a constellation." I smiled back at her. "And my name is Nicholas. Glad to meet you." "You're right, Nicholas. I was named after the constellation Orion. Are you a scout too?" "No, not at all. I've never served in the army. As it is, I'm just a school teacher. I teach history and English literature." "How interesting. I've always been interested in the history of the earth. No, of course, I've read books too. But I've not yet been able to talk live with someone who knows this kind of useful information," she said admiringly. If I had been a little more attentive to her words and behavior, I would have immediately suspected something was wrong, strange. But you as a man must understand me. This was a truly extraterrestrial beauty girl. Yes, even her name could say a lot. Orion, a scout, huh? We sat there all evening and talked. She listened to me very attentively and asked me questions. And I was like a 15-year-old boy on my first date. It was warm and cozy inside. And it was very captivating that Orion was really interested in the historical facts that I was telling. And after a while, it's time to say goodbye. I paid for our dinner with her then. She also liked the pancakes I ordered for myself. Therefore, I did not deny myself the pleasure of courting this pleasant person. We left the bar and walked a little way up the road to the square. It was dark outside, but the street lights illuminated the road. I remember she told me then, "Nicholas, you are a very pleasant companion. What brings you so far?" And I wanted to say something like, "I was looking for you, but I changed my mind." Instead, I answered her. I was visiting my late wife, Alyssa. At the entrance to the city, an elderly woman, who has been selling flowers to me for the 5th year, advised me to go to a bar and meet someone. Who would have thought that I would meet you? Really, I haven't met such interesting men for a long time either. In the line of duty, there is no time for such trifles. But tell me, do you really not know who I really am? No. But I can say with confidence that you are the most beautiful woman I've ever met in my life. Even perhaps more beautiful. I stopped and fell silent. "Now go on, Nicholas. It's all right." And she took my hand. Her hands were very cold. But even then I didn't pay much attention to it. I'm generally such a person, a little distracted. I rarely observe the details of the world around me. Somehow, after Alyssa's death, everything went dark. Thank you for this wonderful evening, Nicholas. I had a great time, and finally took a break from my routine, which to some extent I was sick of. And after these words, she let go of my hand. And despite the fear of spoiling everything, I took her hands in mine and kissed her on the forehead. And then I realized that the girl has something more than a factor of extraterrestrial beauty. Whether you believe me or not, strange, it's up to you. But I heard her voice in my head. She told me then,
Usually, when other Earthmen do that, I kill them. Without fear and conscience, which in general, I do not possess. But I will not condemn you to this fate, Nicholas. Because literally in one earthly evening, you have become much closer to me than it might seem at first glance. Don't look for me, please. It's dangerous for us to see each other now. And she pulled away from me then.
Orion, I took one step back, then to another one. I looked around to see if anyone had seen us on the street. And then she raised a strange-looking device at me. It looked like an iron rod, the size of a teacher's school pointer. A moment, just a moment, for which I blinked after her flash of light and she was gone. Disappeared. I don't even know how she did it. And I remained standing in the same place. My heart was pounding inside. I felt happy and disappointed at the same time. For the first time in a long time, I really wanted to spend a little more time with a girl. In this case with Orion. Fortunately or unfortunately, I didn't find it. No one in the city had seen her or knew her. She didn't stop anywhere. Strange, please. If you have any information about her, please let me know. Its notable features are as follows. The left eye is brown, and the right one is red. She is about 1.70 to 75 tall. Her hair is the color of an emerald, I remind you, and she is incredibly beautiful. If you see her, you'll immediately understand who I'm talking about. It's been a year since we met, and I'm going to Lowell tomorrow. I'll buy flowers, and I'll go to the bar of that hotel again, hoping that I'll meet her. I guess I'm setting her up a lot by talking about her, but I do not know how else I can contact her. And maybe she's watching you too, and she'll immediately understand who I am and where we can see each other. All the best to you, dear Strange. I hope that you will help me. With sincere respect, Nicholas Kadinsky. When I was a little boy, the cosmos seemed to me a fascinating, mysterious force, magnificent, grandiose. And there was a strong sense of confidence that the secrets of space would soon be revealed to mankind and everything would change. It was like that in childhood. Now I understand that space is a terrible black force that has all the possibilities and all the mechanisms of influence on living people, on the humanity of the planet Earth. It is very difficult to talk about this, but what I want to tell you actually took place. It happened to me. Now I say that the cosmos opens up an abyss for man, on the edge of which we realize our insignificance. Despite the exploration of near space, the construction of space stations, radio telescopes, and Hubble-type telescopes, we are still not even in the cradle of space exploration. We are in an embryonic, helpless state, and the cosmic forces can do anything to us. That's what I want to tell you. This happened to me 2 years ago, when I was on an ethnographic expedition to one of the islands of the Bali archipelago. The island was called Lombok. We stayed there for 2 or 3 days. In principle, it doesn't matter. I assure you, what happened to me happens to people all over the globe, regardless of geography and origin. So, I'll start in order. In the evening, I was in my tent, because we went on an expedition into the interior of the island, in search of various ethnographic artifacts, such as rock paintings, petroglyphs, and so on. We weren't sure if we would find it, but we had to check, as we received a specific instruction. But that's not the point. I was in a tent, and I plunged into an incomprehensible state. No trance. But I heard the blood rush to my ears. I began to hear my heart pounding. I was very surprised because I had never suffered from pressure before. I was scared because I thought it might be fever, malaria, or anything. And then I heard a light, barely perceptible whisper in my ears, which sounded in my native language, but somewhere far away, like an echo of some kind. I heard another language, another voice. But what kind of language it is, I can't say now. It consisted of clicking, gurgling sounds that merged into a single cacophony. But nevertheless, I heard the speech in my native language, and this voice told me, "Don't be afraid, it's not malaria." I was surprised, because really understand my condition too, how it feels to hear someone else's voice in your head. Then they told me to calm down, that no harm would be done to me, I should not be afraid. And then I saw a flash, but I didn't see the flash anywhere tangible. The flash was on the cornea of my eyes. I saw it as if from the inside. I was asked to confirm that I was seeing a flash. I squeezed my eyes shut in a state of fright, opened my eyes, but the flash did not disappear. And they told me again, confirm the flash. I do not know how to explain it now, but I said I confirm it. The flash is gone. I began to feel my body sinking into a warm, invisible cocoon, as if a huge cellophane bag was enveloping me. At the same time, I could breathe freely, but I was scared. There was a constant sound in my ears. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. After that, a voice in my head said that my hematopoietic system was malfunctioning. Immediately, I felt a sharp prick in the liver area, after which I was told that the system was now functioning normally. I was shocked. Then the voices died away. In the morning when I woke up, I asked one of my comrades, I asked that everything be confidential between me and him. I said that there was something wrong with me. I heard some voices at night. I asked him to watch me, stay close. I couldn't explain it all to myself. Obviously, healthy people do not hear voices in their heads at night that are trying to interact in some way. A day later, I fell asleep. There was a flash in my eyes again. They asked me to confirm it. I confirmed it and fell into some kind of subdomain of sleep, like a lucid dream. I felt like my consciousness. After all, a dream is a journey of consciousness. Literally thousands of light years away, I find myself in the atmosphere of a giant ocean planet. I'm looking down from a height of probably more than 10 kilometers, and there's a huge ocean below me, and someone is whispering in my ear, "You're at the very edge of the galaxy." After that, I woke up, but the voice in my head continued to sound. He told me that the journey was not happening to me, but to the quantum model of my consciousness that they had created for me to protect me. I began to become convinced that most likely I was going crazy and the expedition should be curtailed. Return home as soon as possible, while I was still in a more or less normal state of mind and spirit, and go to bed for examination. But the voice in my head said again that, "Don't worry, it's okay, we're watching you, it's contact." They also said that they are extraterrestrial entities, and this happens all over the planet Earth, with different people in a random order. And after that, they asked me a question. Do I consent to further travels of my quantum model of my consciousness? I answered yes. And now I want to tell everyone who hears me, if you ever hear a voice in your head, and this voice starts asking for your consent to anything, do not give it in any case. It turned out to be a disaster for me. When I agreed, everything changed. I fell into a state of sleep regardless of my desire. My consciousness moved regardless of what I was doing. It was painful. My head hurt a lot. My nose was bleeding. When I turned to these entities and said that they were harming me, that was hard for me. They replied, "But you gave your consent." To all my requests to stop, they answered unequivocally, "You yourself agreed." They said it many times. After that, I repeatedly woke up in places that were not familiar to me in real life. I fell asleep in my apartment and woke up outside. I'm a psychiatrist on my own, underwent examinations, and was on various examinations. Everyone said that there was no confirmation of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. One doctor prescribed me very serious antipsychotics at his own risk, and I used them. But I didn't get any better. All this lasted about 6 months. And these creatures that penetrated into my brain and controlled me reached such a degree of unbridledness that they began to tell me that they would break my psyche, break my eye, that they needed my mental energy, that the quantum model of my consciousness was their toy. And then I realized that these forces use the psyche of people to fuel any of their devices, mechanisms, perhaps their lives. First, they show something interesting, like you know something. Because I traveled with them, I saw the burial of a giant spaceship on the surface of the moon. I saw Venus on the surface of Pluto. I saw buildings and ruins of cities. It was explained to me that Pluto was pulled millions of years ago into the solar system from another system of stars and planets during a close passage. That there was life on the planet Pluto before that. They also told me about the planet Phaeton and showed me its image in my mind. Explained that there was life there, which then moved to Mars after a planetary catastrophe and then to Earth. These are the obvious answers for me now, but I keep tormenting myself. They want me to go. Every day I hear threats that if I don't obey, that will break my psyche and I will become an incompetent vegetable. I can't get free in any way. And I gave my consent to this myself. I've not seen these creatures, but as they explained to me, they are not able to move their bodies between the stars. Only their consciousness can move, and their psyche is millions of times stronger than human ones. They are able to suppress the will, influence the time continuum and the reality around them. And those creatures, the gray and gray-green men that we are used to seeing in the movies, it also exist. These are biorobots that can withstand the overload of space flights. Therefore, they do the work of other entities. They kidnap people, by the way. All this is true. Conduct inhuman experiments on people, do experiments of all kinds, and at the same time do not feel pity. Because these are biorobots. They cannot help, they cannot save, they cannot tell. They are biorobots, and they carry out the program that is embedded in them. I think that the main idea and purpose of beings who travel with their consciousness between the stars is to create such biorobots from people. I understand everything perfectly. I'm trying to fight, but I can't resist them. With my message, I want to convey to you, never give consent to what you don't like and what you doubt. As soon as they receive your yes, they will not leave you alone. Perhaps they are involved in some kind of planetary or universal conspiracy. Perhaps they have received permission for such experiments from the heads of mankind. After all, now the world is fighting for victory over the singularity, trying to learn how to digitize human consciousness, thereby opening up the prospects of eternal life. This is done by Elon Musk, Altman, those who train and program neural networks. We are on the threshold of something terrible, inhuman, and diabolical. Take advantage of my message. Realize that cosmic entities are watching over us. We are under their constant control, and it is unknown who they will snatch tomorrow for their experiments. Be able to resist this. Mobilize all your will into a fist and say, I am not a test mouse. They are afraid of this, but if you give them your consent, then blame yourself. I'm finishing my message. In the future, if I don't get in touch, then you know, most likely my earthly days have stopped. Today, I will tell you a story that our subscribers sent us. Good night, fellow subscribers of the Strange UFO channel. I decided to tell my story of meeting, as it seems to me, with something alien. I was about 12 years old at the time, give or take a year, so many details have been erased from my memory, but the overall picture has remained unchanged. I was already quite independent, so I went to various clubs and sections where hyperactive parents signed me up. That's when, returning home from the football section, I decided to cut through the park. By the way, that park was not abandoned, but it was approaching this state. Not the largest, with a couple of permanent attractions, a man-made pond, stalls, and benches. Some of the tiled paths were spoiled somewhere by nature, and somewhere by people. The roots of nearby trees lifted some of the tiles, skewing or completely splitting them. Strange personalities also stole several tiles. The trees, incredibly tall for such an area, in fact, were almost not cared for, occasionally pruning branches that were too long. I think you, comrades in Nona, have already imagined this picture. My path ran along the shore of that very man-made reservoir, a small lake whose shores are overgrown. That's where I saw it. The water in the center of the lake was slightly glowing. This light, I cannot describe it, comrades Anons. He's not from here. I haven't seen anything like it before or since. It's like a mixture of all colors, at the same time the absence of every single one of them. Something that could not exist on our planet. And the glow was gaining strength. Now only a small spot in its center glows. Now it begins to expand, and now the whole lake is shining with this color. A painful, unearthly, frightening color. I tried to run, but I stumbled and fell shamefully on my ass. The glow was gaining strength and steam began to rise from the surface of the water. It was getting thicker and rising higher, as if forming something like a tornado, but without wind. In the seconds it took me to crawl away and rest against a tree, this thing became almost twice as thick and tall. And so, when the concentration reached the limit, the smoke, steam, gas, in short, this thing began to rotate, twisting as if around its axis. She spun faster and faster, and now, with a pillar of the same light pierced the heavens, finally going outside. God only knows how I stayed dry at that moment. But the worst part was something else. As I was leaving, I suddenly felt eyes on me, a strange, cold, studying look. There would be no running without any looking back. I turned around. And saw the remains of this creature. Yes, now I'm sure it's a creature, and worse, it's intelligent. The swirls of that strange gas still hung in the air, continuing to rotate around its axis, but this axis was directed at me. It was as if a grotesque eye hung over the pond and fixed its heavy gaze on me. But the swirls finally blinked and pulled into the water. How I ran that evening. I've never run like this before. I ran through this thrice-cursed park, jumping over roots, running around low branches, and finally got to a stop. In general, for about a month I didn't think about that damn park and this thing, whatever it is. I just stopped taking a shortcut along the way to the bus stop and began to go around. Longer, but I had no desire to return to that lake. It was only a month later that I got sick. According to the symptoms, the flu. It was already autumn, so I wasn't particularly surprised by this. I felt, by the way, just disgusting. Much worse than with the usual flu, which I already had. This went on for 3 days, and then the dreams came. Although now I'm not sure if they were dreams. A completely white room, a quiet hum coming from the walls, and again these creatures, as if woven from fog. And the light. This abnormal light of an incomprehensible shade was also here. I don't really know, or rather don't remember what happened to me. The eyes seemed to be filled with water or something similar. This thing did not interfere with seeing in any way, but an unpleasant feeling remained. The creatures talked to me about something, and I even answered them something. Not of his own volition, as if he was in a dream. Such a disgusting feeling when you are not able to control your body and everything happens as if on automatic. And it was also cold there, like an autumn evening. Not a fierce frost, but a chill that penetrates to the very depths, from which the hair stands on end all over the body. Something was definitely happening to me there, something was being done to me. Sometimes after waking up, I found healing scars or bruises on my body. On the stomach, on both arms, above the elbows, and on the palms, on the temples, on the neck, on the calves of the legs. These marks looked as if they had been inflicted on me for a very long time and rarely lingered beyond one day. What is even more strange, there was always something wrong in the room, as in the evening. An open window, books piled on the floor, or clothes lying out of place. It was freaking scary and stressful. Yes, by the way, I was ill for about a week, after which everything abruptly passed, as if there was no illness. Well, it's almost over. The dreams remained. Each time they changed, each time stronger and stronger. If at first I was lying down, then after that very week I was already sitting up. Pictures flashed through my mind that I just couldn't realize. However, there were also familiar images. Images of what I saw on Earth. I feel like, tested. They asked about something and I answered, being in the same disgusting state, without control over myself. Bruises and scars stopped appearing, but headache and eye problems took their place. Sometimes the picture just blurred, or it was as if new colors were added to it. Colors that I couldn't name, because I didn't even know how to describe them. And this, gentlemen and aunts, was even worse than bruises. Before that, I could blame everything on my own carelessness and training, albeit with some difficulty, but now I began to seriously suspect whether I was going crazy. I didn't even think of telling my parents or some school psychologist at that time. They won't believe it at best, but they can cling on and send them to pass all sorts of tests. I was a fool then, what can I do? However, this story ended quickly enough. The events were repeated almost as at the very beginning. I got lost in thought and turned towards the park. Yes, the one who swore to bypass the 10th road. And most stupidly, I went exactly the same way as the last time. When it dawned on me where I had stumbled into, it was too late to turn around. That ill-fated lake was spread out in front of me again. And yes, it started to glow again. Except this time, it was a little different. I, too, was pulsing with this strange light, as if something in me was responding to the call of what was in the lake. By that time, I had already spat on everything. My body was not listening to me again, as in those dreams. Were they dreams, though? I'm not sure about that anymore. All I had to do was freeze and hope that I could survive this evening, at least partially. Never, comrades, have I been so afraid before. Watching the funnel grow and expand of an incomprehensible color and origin, and how, in response to its flickering, my own light begins to pulsate more and more. I was terrified. Primal animal horror. That's what I felt then. I was so engrossed in my fear that I didn't immediately notice the change. The light pulsing around me seemed to be attracted to a large tornado that now towered over the lake. As if through a siphon, the glow flowed and absorbed into it. About a minute passed, as the glow around me went out, and the tornado began to twist again with incredible force, as it was the first time. However, something has changed again. An incredible weakness came over me, as if I hadn't slept for 3 days. I staggered and fell to the ground. I don't know how long I was lying on the ground, but when I woke up my body was numb, and there were several missed messages from my mother on the phone. Despite this, I laughed. He laughed joyfully and slightly hysterically, listening to the rustle of leaves on the trees around and the splash of water. Such native and understandable sounds and colors. I was incredibly happy. I survived, and finally it's all over. 20 years have passed since that moment, and I still don't know what to think about it. I can't tell if it was distorted memories and dreams of a child or really something alien. The only thing I know for sure is that after that incident, the vision in both my eyes dropped by about 1. This is my only proof of the reality of what happened in that ill-fated month. I am still sure that I was abducted almost every night and carried out some experiments, but alas, I do not have any serious evidence. If you think that this is not proof of the existence of aliens, then you are right. There is much more evidence, and on our channel we will reveal all the secrets and evidence of their presence. Subscribe to the channel and send me your stories related to aliens by email. You will find contacts in the About the Channel section. Together, we will force the authorities of all countries to disclose all the information they have. After all, people should know the truth.